Let's start with some Google news because apparently Google has been doing a thing.
As ever.
There is this news, and I'm actually very curious who in our audience already heard about it and who has not heard about it. But there's this thing about Google rewriting titles. Can you take us through what happened here, Jono?
Yeah, I'll start by taking a step back because I want to talk about meta descriptions first. So, for years, Google has sometimes changed your meta description. So, you'll use the Yoast SEO plugin, for example, to write a nice meta description, how you want to describe your page and show it, preview it, and then Google changes it to something else entirely. And they do that because they think they can match it better for the user. They think they understand the content better, all good reasons, and that's fine. They've started doing it for title tags, or at least something very similar. So you will craft your title tag. This is my product page. This is blue widgets. This is my service page. We have these opening hours, whatever else you're putting in your nice shiny title tags in the hopes that they show up in the search results. And Google's changing them. And if they were doing that in the same way as the meta descriptions and making it better, maybe we'd be okay with that. However, in a lot of cases, they are making quite politely making quite a big mess of it. And you can see in the example here, if you searched for Joe Biden as recently as last week, the top result, aside from those news pieces, said vice president. And that's the actual page title for that page wasn't that at all. It said president or the United States, whatever it said. But Google was changing that because they thought they could do a better job to vice president. And obviously, that's a massive issue when it comes to reliability, reputation, legal aspects in some things like the pharmaceutical sector or gambling sectors or legal sectors. If Google is changing the wording on how these pages and brands are representing themselves, the products they sell. This is really concerning. Again, if they were doing a really good job of this, it wouldn't necessarily be a huge problem. But there's no way to opt out of this. There's no way to control it. And they're not doing a great job in many cases. It's a bit all over the place. And the whole SEO industry is up in arms. It is a mess.
Yeah, and they started doing this like a decade ago in very simple forms, and I was against it when they did that.
Yep.
And I'm against it now because it feels wrong, and it's, well, it's not necessarily a good thing. And as this example shows, it's over relying on AI/machine learning. That I don't think it's gonna really help us. They did an update in their documentation on how they generate web page titles, and some of it's actually very interesting because the meta description stuff that you mentioned is query dependent. So when you type in a query, the meta description that Google shows you is actually depending on what you searched for. Now, the title doesn't seem to be.
No, and that's the really baffling bit of this, right? They have enough firepower to do smart stuff with meta descriptions. They can understand what the user's searching for, the intent behind that, and craft on the fly a meta description that might be drawn from the page, might be generated entirely, and really produce a kind of summary of that page that's really helpful. And then yet with titles, they're just saying there is one perfect title for this page, which often isn't perfect. Now, we should stress to point out there are a lot of scenarios where this does make the title better. There are millions, if not more, websites where the title of the homepage is home, where the title of the services page is services, and many examples like this. There are many, many pages which don't have titles at all. And in many of those cases, Google doing a better job of describing what the thing is, great. And yeah, we've seen examples of them doing light versions of this for years. Things like either adding or removing the brand to the end of the title. It's quite a common thing. If you've missed it out, maybe it's helpful to include it.
Actually, what they seem to be doing a lot is taking the first heading on the page and adding the site brand name, which coincidentally is the default if you install Yoast SEO. I mean, it makes perfect sense to do that.
Yep. You want to say, this is what this page is, and this is who it's from. And the combination of that is a really good signpost for here's what a user should expect. It's a nice way of describing it. It's consistent with the kind of the broader best practice of the W3C consortium, who say, here is how the internet should work and how HTML pages should work, that a page's title should describe what that page is and give some kind of indication of where it's coming from. So product name, brand is a good structure. But then for Google to go in and change that on the fly without any control feels a bit messy.
It is, yeah, it's weird. I agree, and it's slightly annoying. But it is what it is. Brody did an excellent piece on it. I'm hoping that Taco will drop a link to this in the chat if you want to click on. But yeah, this is actually a real good piece with a lot of info on what's happening. And then Google opened up a thread on the forums where you can drop links that get rewritten badly.
Yeah, I'm not convinced this is the best process. So there are a lot of cases we're saying where these changes have a real impact on click-through rate because they confuse the intent, they don't describe the page very well, they change what was quite a finely crafted marketing message into something generic or confusing. And then obviously all the brands and companies behind that are saying, this isn't ideal. So yeah, Google have provided this form that you can go and fill out and say, here's an example of where it's really getting it wrong. However, this is an unmoderated forum thread, essentially, and it's already very noisy. It's already full of people who aren't really understanding and getting confused. It would amaze me if this is Google's process for dealing with this. However, we come on to this, but given this is the only formal way we have of complaining about this, other than tweeting into the void, I think anytime you do see an example where Google are making it worse and demonstrably worse for your customers and users, not just for you as a brand, I think it's worth us submitting that. There's some really nasty examples. You can just about see one in this where Google had changed the title of the flu page on the NHS website in the UK. So that's the official medical resource for the health system on the flu page. They changed it from flu to flu vaccines, which is close, but it's a fundamentally different type of page. It's different information. It's a different intent. It's a different type of user with a different type of product problem. And that could have real world impacts on people's health, on disease control, and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, this sort of stuff is scary. If you see them getting it wrong, fill out the form.
Yeah. There's quite a few good articles around it. This one was, where was it? Help me here, Jono. I'm not even sure anymore.
Oh no, I've lost track of that. I'm sure we've got a link somewhere.
We do.
Scrambling madly. Is this WordStream?
Yes, this was WordStream, I think.
Yes.
That did a pretty decent article on how to fix it. Because for some pages, this might actually be bad. So what you need to do in many ways is look at your key pages. We actually have a slide on this. So
yeah, and this isn't bulletproof at the moment. There aren't any really solid ways to fix this, quote unquote, but there are some things you can do to try and stay on top of it. So, and Google say as much as do we, keep focusing on writing good page titles. I've just triggered my phone. That's really annoying. But be specific and be focused. So don't fill it full of keywords that you want to rank for. Don't describe all of the things. Be really quite on the point as to what this page is and how you want to describe it. And then the only thing you really can do is monitor it. So you can Google your key terms and see what shows up. Because we know they're not customizing these based on the query, you can actually check that quite reliably. Use Google Search Console or your SEO tools of choice to look for places where your click-through rate might have dropped. So they rolled this out on August 17th, I think. Worth double checking that, but you can spot places where your pages suddenly start dropping click-through rate. And then just monitoring that and bounce rates as well, because the side effect of this is if Google are misdescribing your pages, you're probably going to be changing your users' expectations. So when they get to those pages, if they're confused or they don't find what they're looking for, that's going to be problematic. And yeah, throughout all of this, when you see them getting it wrong, do make the effort to go and post examples on the Google form. Otherwise, there's no incentive for Google to address this. So sorry, we're all in this together. We've had examples of this on Yoast.com where it's changing our stuff, and there's nothing we can do about it other than go and fill out that form. So hopefully, if enough of us make some noise, they'll address this.
Yeah, let me answer one of the questions that came in from Barry Adams immediately because it seems timely. He asks, are you in favor of a meta robots tag that ensures Google uses the page's title element as its search snippet headline? Honestly, yes. I asked for that 10 years ago when they started doing this. I asked for it again when they started changing it even more. 10 years ago, Danny Sullivan agreed with me. Now he works for Google and he suddenly doesn't agree with me anymore because it might be used wrong, which honestly is a pretty poor argument. But yeah, no, it is something I would really, really like. I would like to have more control. At the same time, if we're not going to get more control, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it.
Yeah, just need them to get it right.
Yeah. But there was more news. Google now tell us why they literally give you the feedback on why stuff was ranked, which is probably regulatorily based, right?
Yeah, this is interesting, but I think it's almost certainly part of the broader conversations that they're having with various governments about disclosure of bias and tracking, etc. But as an end user, I think this could be quite interesting and quite helpful. So this is US only at the moment, but it will be rolling out worldwide shortly. When you Google something and you get a bunch of results, you can interrogate one of those results and they will say, okay, we showed you this because it matched the following keywords, that a whole bunch of sites have linked to it, that it has this kind of intent. This isn't stuff that's going to give you any kind of magical insight that might make you change your SEO strategy, but it is quite helpful to make sure that the right things are showing up for the right reasons, the right kind of scenarios. And again, as an end user, just a human Googling stuff, it's quite interesting to see why Google thought that a certain site might be a good match. And that might influence how I go on to research and shop and behave.
I can totally see someone scraping this to get all the related terms, though.
Yes, absolutely. Watch your favorite SEO tools over the next couple of months to start extracting that.
Terms related to your search appear getting and vaccine. So vaccine is a proper for a shot. That's pretty darn good, but it also shows you exactly how good they are at that sort of stuff. Okay. This one was interesting. Google saying that they will pass permanent signals with a redirect after a year.
Excellent.
I love it and hate it at the same time. Because people always ask us, how long should we keep that redirect up? And my answer has always been and will remain indefinitely if you can.
Yep, forever until the heat death of the universe.
Yeah.
Because search engines will still request those URLs. People will still have them bookmarked. The email you sent 5 years ago is still in somebody's inbox with a link in it. URLs never die. And sorry, go.
Yeah, and I agree. It's a year is just not long enough. I don't think that from a search perspective, this will impact much. But yeah, I would always keep redirects up if you can.
It's quite nice ammunition. Like there's always a developer who wants to do some housekeeping and some cleaning because they've not got enough important work to do. And they start saying, oh, we've got 3,000 redirects sat in this system. Can we trim that down? Can we delete the old ones? And in some cases, that might have a performance impact, but not really, not anymore, not in the modern web on modern tooling. The benefit of trimming legacy redirects is going to be so negligible now. So yeah, always don't fall into the habit of getting rid of old redirects just for the sake of tidying. Keep them as long as you can.
I fully agree. Okay. Now for the daily section or the monthly section on where Google found more places to add ads.
Yep. Well, whilst these are ad related, there's an organic component to this as well. But this all ties back to Google Merchant Center, which I feel like we're mentioning a lot. I don't think we've had one of these other than when we missed last month, where we haven't mentioned Google Merchant Center, which if you are selling things online, you really ought to be on top of. Check it out, register, optimize your feeds, etc. You pipe all of your product information in, and then you become eligible for a whole bunch of what Google calls surfaces. So Google Search is a surface, Images is a surface, Google Discover is a surface, YouTube is a surface. These are all just places where results can be output. Increasingly, products powered by Merchant Center turn up in more and more of these surfaces. And this latest update, if I'm remembering correctly, makes your offers eligible for some of the Google shopping experiences, even if you're not selling and running paid advertising. So there is so much opportunity here to get exposure if you are the cheapest or the fastest or the newest, or if you've got a special offer on. Yeah, make sure that you're playing in that space, because the lines between Google's organic search in the product space and Google Merchant Center are blurring and blurring and blurring.
True. So this was rather nice of Google. Google added a URL property to the author schema so that they could more easily uniquely identify authors of articles. Now, you may ask, okay, that's nice. What do I need to do to add this? Well, you don't need to do anything if you're running Yoast SEO, because we already had it before Google made it the standard. Why is that interesting? Well, I think that they actually, at this time, we influenced them instead of they influenced us. It's funny, if you've been in SEO for a while, then Google has been trying to identify authors of articles for at least a decade now. This is just yet another step in that direction. It makes a lot of sense. We already did this. You don't need to do anything. Yoast SEO does this correctly by default. What I will say is that if in your WordPress author profile you don't have links to your Twitter, your LinkedIn, etc., you should maybe add those.
Yeah, it's also a nice vindication of the kind of approach we use for schema in the plugin. So we do 1,000 things in schema in the plugin, in the Yoast plugin, and Google maybe reads 100 of those. But tomorrow it'll read 101 of them, and the next day 102. As they get more sophisticated in how they parse and read schema, they're catching up to the stuff that we've already implemented, which is really nice.
Yeah. Well, I was actually relatively happy to see this. Google search link spam update. We get those like every other week, right?
Yep. There's no new news here. They keep doing this. It's great. Less spam is good for the web, is good for the SEO industry, is good for businesses, is good for users. It's nice that they continue to talk about this and improve it. I think the only SEO angle here is that it is now far past time that anybody should be looking or even thinking about spammy techniques as something you would want to build a strategy on. You shouldn't be buying links. You shouldn't be relying on spam. You shouldn't be purchasing articles that get posted on blogger networks to link to other sites, to increase your page rank. You should be building a brand and producing content, which means that people naturally like and share and link to the things you publish. And that is hard, but it's meant to be hard. This is a competition. Those are the rules. It's going to get harder and harder to cheat. If you're still playing in the gray, I would be reevaluating your strategy.
When people are sharing the links that we were sharing internally in the chat.
Nice.
Because I didn't actually reload after you added that slide.
Oh, disaster.
This is in interesting news. Google added a couple of case studies on Google Discover and how if you make the image bigger, more people click on your site. This should not be a surprise. Look at the screenshot that we have here. You double the size of the thing. Of course, it'll lead to more people clicking on the thing. It is as simple as that. It is something that works quite well with Yoast SEO by default. So all you have to do is just install the plugin and it works.
It is. There were two nice things that came.
WordPress does it by default too now, right?
Yeah, so there were two nice things that came out of this. One was that the meta tags and the schema stuff they talk about is stuff that we already do and have done for 18 months now. And the other is that both of the case studies they show are Yoast users. And they've won automatically because they're using our tech, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's good fun to see that always. Is this is the same thing? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice. These are the case studies they did. It would be interesting if Google ever reaches out to you to get to do a case study like that. By all means, do say yes, because these are good links.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Google launched a new version of how search works, which is always interesting to look at when you have absolutely nothing else to do.
Yeah, behind the scenes, I know that this happened because they had an intern in with nothing else to do. So they said, rebuild that site. This was long overdue, an overhaul. It's a really good resource if you really don't know anything about how Google or SEO works. It is the absolute basics on content publishing, link building. There are no hidden secrets in there. It's quite a pretty resource. I think if you need to explain to your elderly parents what you do for a living, this isn't the worst resource. Actually, I lied. There was one nugget which came out of it, which was an update on the number of algorithm updates they have, which said that in 2020 they launched 4,500 updates. That's an insane number of tweaks and changes, which really reinforces the message we always have of like, don't be chasing specific algorithm updates and changes, because this system is constantly changing. There are no big algorithm updates. There's just a soup that evolves over time. So yeah, do the big strategy play, not the tactical chasing.
Fully agreed. And with that, we've come to the end of our Google section. I want to state for the record that we do like our friends at Google, even though we bash them all the time.
Yep. They try hard. They do good work. It's just a messy company.
I said that specifically for you. Then we have other stuff, internet news. And the funny thing is that, well, it's not Google news. It really is.
Yeah, Alphabet news.
Talk about what this is, Jono.
So this is quite minor, but has big implications, I think. So YouTube is doing a few big things, which are automatic translate. There we go. Excellent. So a big visual overhaul, which is the least interesting bit about this. But if you search for something in YouTube and there aren't any good video results in your language, Google will return foreign language content with automatic translations. So they'll go, okay, there's nothing here that's a great fit. Let's pull in something that's not your native language, but translate it, which is really powerful. That expands the kinds of things you can find to other markets, to other languages, etc. And then also the inverse. Also they will include, if there really isn't a good video match, they'll include conventional Google search results in YouTube. And then on the other side of things, you've got more and more video search results and YouTube content in the conventional search results. And what we're seeing is the lines between YouTube SERPs and Google SERPs blur. And there's two really interesting flavors of that. One is, at the moment, this is only in Indian searches and somewhere else, I think. So it's very niche, but this is the beginning. But more importantly, we're seeing a blurring of format and medium. So we talk a lot in the Yoast SEO plugin and on here about things like understand the user's intent, understand what kinds of terminology they use, write structured content for that. What we don't talk about enough, maybe, is, are you communicating with them in the best medium? Some searches and some intents are going to be much better served by a video than by a page of text. And the strategies around that are going to be different. The competitors are going to be different. The marketplace is going to be different. Increasingly, video is going to become, and already is becoming, a first-class citizen of all of these ecosystems. It's not going to be an extra thing where you might look at. It's going to be the main way we compete. Certainly in spaces like recipes, we can see that it's very, very hard to play if you don't have video. That's only going to become more common. So yeah, the one takeaway here is keep an eye on what YouTube are doing and do more video.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So the other thing that came by was Shopify and TikTok working together, which has tremendous potential, I think.
If I knew what TikTok was, I might have an opinion. No, it does.
I don't know what TikTok is. That's not true. I have kids, so I know what TikTok is, to a certain extent. But yeah, no, I do think that this kind of buy what you see kind of thing is very powerful, and could well lead to a lot of business for some people.
Yeah, this is more blurring of the lines between social and commerce, right? We see all of the platforms doing this, and yeah, I want to purchase this specific thing here and now cuts out the entire research funnel. All of the points where a user might have thought about something, Googled it, come to your website, bounced around for a few days, hummed and hard, it's all gone, which makes it much harder to compete in those spaces. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Absolutely. These kind of numbers are the things that blow my mind. I mean, Walmart is not a small company. Now, Amazon was not a small company anywhere in the last decade either, but Amazon surpassing Walmart in spend is must be huge, and it's shocking to see that how big that is becoming. It also shows you that is secretly, in many ways, also one of the bigger search engines out there, because that is where people decide what to buy in many cases.
Yes, particularly if you're competing on price or proximity, right? Which makes it hard. If you're trying to sell your own stuff on your own website and you're only really competing on price or location, you're going to find it harder and harder to compete against Amazon and other big platforms for attention and preference at the beginning of people's searches. If they're conditioned to start at Amazon and look for the cheapest thing, the ways in which you can grab their attention organically in other spaces become fewer and fewer, which means it's even more important to build a brand and a content strategy and a reputation, which means that people don't just go to Amazon immediately and cut you out entirely. And again, yeah, that's hard. And you are competing directly against Amazon, but that is the game.
Okay. US Apple Maps, rate places, add their own photos, basically playing the Google Maps game.
Yes, there were some differences. So you can only thumbs up or thumbs down. You can't write open text, but you can do it across multiple facets of the thing you're reviewing. Interestingly, there's very little spam control and prevention on this at the moment. So it's almost certain that the SEO industry is going to come in here and make this horrible, but we'll wait and see. It is more evidence that Apple are becoming more involved in search. I don't have a link to it handy, but I'm sure we can send it afterwards. There was a fascinating talk by our good friend Tom Anthony recently, who's an SEO, talking about what Apple's search ecosystem might look like and how it's different to Google's. And in particular, how all of Apple's SEO and search mechanisms will be based on integration into and reading data from their own apps and ecosystem. So these ratings might have a really profound impact on rankings and discoverability for restaurants, shops, etc. So whilst this feels like a kind of a piddly imitation of Google Maps, I think it's going to have quite a big impact. So it's worth keeping an eye on.
Perfect. This was quite cool. I saw this come by Twitter, allowing you to set up a newsletter subscription button on your profile by connecting it to Review, which they bought a while ago. This could actually be a very nice way of doing this. I thought it was quite chic, a chic integration in many ways, not overly spammy.
Yeah, this is really nice, and it's part of a bigger trend I think we've seen, especially in the last year or so, with the COVID crisis changing how people behave online. We're seeing a real rise of the creator economy, and that's not just people who carve wooden things and sell them on Etsy. It's also people who write and curate and analyze. And we're seeing spaces like journalism gradually become decoupled from big business. And now I can subscribe to or follow a journalist whose content I like, or somebody who I sign up for a bunch of paid email newsletters from people who write about the tech industry and the SEO industry. More and more of that is becoming feasible. And I think it's worth thinking that there are more ways to monetize a website and a business than just selling products and services. It's this kind of thing is making it easier to monetize an audience. And SEO plays a really key role in that, in discovery, in preference building, in brand building. Having content models where you produce content that gets people interested and hooked in exchange for their email address opens up entirely new ways of monetizing. And I think one of the practical implications of that is that maybe your ad-based websites where you're showing banner ads and using display, which isn't great for SEO, which can be slow, which can be a bit spammy, maybe there are alternatives where you harvest people's email addresses and give them some kind of value through these kinds of mechanisms. So more of this sort of thing is really fascinating, and it opens up entirely new types of advertising models.
Yeah. So this is available to everyone who has a review account, but it only shows to a small group of people on Twitter so far. So it's still in beta. But yeah, it is very, very interesting. Then we're going on to Yoast news.
Woo!
Now, there wasn't all that much Yoast news, other than us being acquired by Newfold Digital, of course. We joined Newfold. Newfold is a much bigger company than we are, and we're already having some very fun conversations within the company on stuff we're going to do together. That, of course, has to remain a secret until it's no longer a secret. But we're very happy. I can honestly tell you that as a founder, I'm very happy because I've finished the game, started the company, and I've sold it. So, we are very happy. Everyone's staying on. We're all going absolutely nowhere. So far, nobody has actually given their notice either. So we're still the same team as we were before, and we're going to do more and more fun stuff. I really look forward to this. Can't say much more about it other than that. If you have questions, by all means, do ask them. We brought out Yoast SEO 16.8, and that includes support for Slovak and Norwegian. At some point, I will explain to you how our selection process for new languages goes. Today is not that day. Yoast SEO 16.9 came out with an SEO workout to clean up your content. We'll be adding more and more of these workouts in Yoast SEO Premium. I really, really like this concept.
Yeah, this is cool.
It is really guiding you through making your website better. It is where Yoast SEO is the gym. Yoast SEO Premium becomes the personal trainer. And I can't tell you enough how powerful this can be just by going through, improving your internal linking, stuff like that. I think it's really, really powerful. And if you think that this sounds like an ad, it might be because it is. So nice. We have a nice coupon code for you. SEO News August 21. If you want to upgrade to premium, now's the time to do so. Then we had Yoast SEO 17.0, in which we did even more language stuff. By all means, do check out the videos and the fun stuff we do. We have a whole campaign on We Speak Your Language, or at least we try to. I think there's a lot to be gained from that, and it's one of the nice things of being European, that we get to just talk a lot of languages and spread the love about a lot of languages, and teach our American friends about the fact that people do speak other languages than English. We've had our first ever Yoast Summer School. Now, I don't think I saw anyone in the comments going through, and I see in the chat, discount code again, please. I will go back to that slide later on. The Yoast Summer School, sorry if you're in the Southern Hemisphere and you were not actually having summer. We did. You can watch all of those back, yoa.it/summer recap. It is really worthwhile going through. We have 4 very well-attended workshop webinars, and they were really good. So go and listen to them. They're free. They're nice. Go do it. I see Sarah said she went to 04. Sarah, do tell us if you liked it, because just saying I went to 04 is not helpful. Then we had an SEO podcast with Cindy Krum, which was great. It's always nice talking to Cindy. And another one with my good long-time friend, Marcus Tandler, one of the original SEOs as well from Germany. People asking for the discount code. Well, here it is again. SEO News August 21. And then we have the date for the next webinar.
Yes.
And I left some time for questions.
And there is now a nice shiny button at the bottom of your screen. It's green and it will start flashing in a bit. And that allows you to quickly register for the next SEO webinar. So do click it. Make sure that you're the first, because, social distancing, we only can have a limited audience this time. So make sure you're not too late in joining the next SEO webinar.
There's only a couple of people listening in right now. It looks like by the speed of the chat. So
yes, we're talking several hundreds of people.
Yeah.
Which you can also see in the list of questions, because that is getting longer and longer. And for the first time, we're seeing a lot of upvotes, which is also amazing. So if you haven't yet, scroll down to the bottom of your screen. There is the Ask a Question section, and there you can ask your question or upvote others. So we'll start with the most popular one, because with 27 upvotes, that's an all-time high. In WordPress, you publish your content either as a post, blog, or as a page. Is there a difference in terms of SEO? Or do Google crawl and rank these two content types equally?
So, as usual, there's a short and a long answer to these things. The short answer is it really shouldn't differ much. The long answer is if you have comments on your posts, and you have a lot of them, then at some point they might dilute a bit of what the topic of the page is if they go off topic. At the same time, if they don't go off topic, they might actually add to the value of the page. So there's a bit to consider there. But other than that, technically, there is no real difference, I think.
Two minor things. One is pages aren't conventionally authored. So a post will have an author. Pages might, but typically don't. They're kind of evergreen static things, which might change a whole bunch of stuff. And three things. Two is we output different schema on pages versus articles, because on posts, because we know that posts are more likely to be articles, but that shouldn't be profoundly different. The biggest thing is that posts tend to be date-based. So the longer they've been around, the further back they'll end up in an archive. As your newer posts come in, the older ones get pushed further back. That might mean that they get buried in your site architecture, they get crawled or discovered less, they get read less. That might have a secondary impact. But from a technical perspective, very, very similar.
Well, Joost, if people have a blog that is very heavy on comments, is there a plugin they can use to better manage their comments?
That's such a good question, Taco. It's almost as if you're thinking about a specific plugin that we run at Yoast ourselves and that we built because we have to deal with a lot of comments sometimes. It's called Commentax, and it is written by yours truly. And it helps you deal with that a bit.
Right. So everyone who upvoted this question after we started answering, that's amazing, because it will now be harder to get the all-time high for the next question. All right, next one. As a backlinking strategy, how can social media be used for this purpose? Or is there any other better way for backlinking?
I'm going to refer to Jono because he loves answering questions about links.
Yeah. I'll give it. So yeah, again, there's a simple answer and there's a long answer. The simple answer is that the best way to earn links is by writing and building and making the kinds of things which people want to link to: resources, guides, content, solutions, etc. Social media has an interesting role to play in that. I would not care at all about the links you get from tweets and Facebook messages and LinkedIn messages. There is no way that Google is explicitly counting and measuring the value of those. However, if you produce good, interesting, useful content that people share and tweet about and send to their parents and syndicate and reference and that makes that content more likely to get discovered. If it's more likely to get discovered, more people will read it, more people will engage with it, more people might link to it. And because it's inherently good, that will generate a whole bunch of positive user engagement signals, like fewer people will spend longer on your pages, people are less likely to bounce from your search results. All of those things might influence your performance positively. So use social media for the right reasons. Don't chase links for the sake of chasing links. Do the kinds of things which earn you links and focus on that instead.
I agree.
Right. Let me quickly post a link to the Comment Hacks plugin in the chat.
Is that a social media link?
So what is the best way to permanently delete a page that is only gone to with an internal link that has since been removed? Not specific at all.
Well, the best way to delete it is to actually delete it, and then delete it from the trash that WordPress holds. After that, redirecting it should make the link go away, but yeah, that's about all you can do normally. I would want to say that making a 404 into a 410 would speed up the process, but doesn't seem like that's the case at the moment.
All right. And then a fun one. How does staying in the classic editor affect SEO?
Oh, this is a great question. From a technical perspective, not a lot, except as somebody's answered very helpfully in the comment, it will mean that you can't take advantage of the shiny new toys, which are only really feasible in the Gutenberg block editor because of the way it works, because of the way all the bits talk to each other. So immediately, it means that you start falling behind your competitors. And this is the big thing that it really affects, that as we've mentioned, SEO is competitive. You are fighting against other people to prove that you have the best site. And if those other sites and your competitors have more powerful tooling than you and are constructing and publishing rich, fluid, visually appealing, interactive, engaging content, and you're putting words on a page, at some point that's going to create a gap in users' expectations, in your reputation, in how your content is perceived, and that's going to start to hurt. You have to compete, which means you have to use all of the tools available to do so. And it's a big learning curve and it's a big gap, though it's getting smaller. But really, if you want to be fighting to win, you have to be using the right toys.
Yeah, and anything with the name Classic on it is probably not going to help you.
Yeah.
All right. Then we do have a classic question. Should branding be included at the end of the title? Because Anne says, I've been telling people not to, as it would dilute the value of target key phrases in the title. Is that outdated advice?
Yes. I honestly think that wasn't true 10 years ago, and it's still not true now, if I'm honest. And there's not a whole lot of things I disagree with Anne on, but no, yeah, we've always said add the branding. It's also because in many ways, if your brand does what it does right, it'll actually entice people to click more, because people never search once. People always do more research around the topic. And if you have a lot of content around that topic, and you show up with your brand in those search results more than once, even when they don't click on you the first or the second or the third time, they might click on you the next time because they see your brand the whole time. So I think that branding is very important. I also think that for that reason, it's important to pick an actual brand for your business. So pick something that is rememberable, and use that and add it to every page you can, because if you don't, then Google will do it for you anyway.
Nice.
All right. Let's see, we have some time left and there are more and more questions coming in. So keep up the good work. If you have a question you want to ask, scroll all the way down to the bottom of your screen, click the Ask a Question button and ask your question. If you put them in the chat, it's going pretty fast, so we might miss it. So please use the Ask a Question section. That said, while editing a page with Elementor, and we have just one H1 on the page, Yoast SEO says that the number of H1 is more than one. Is that something they should worry about?
It's annoying. We'd have to look into the specifics here, because if there is just one H1 and we're reporting that there are multiple, then something's going wrong somewhere, and that's not necessarily nice. But if you know for sure that there is only one H1 on the page, it's not like anyone's giving you real points for those green or red bullets. So feel free to ignore us when we're wrong.
It might be worth double checking there's not an H1 hidden in your logo. That's quite common, where Elementor implements the text as part of the logo but hides it.
That could very well be. So that is something to check indeed, if that's the case, because then we might count it wrong. So yeah, check that. But otherwise, do file a bug. We'll have a look at it. It's one of the things that we can always try and improve on.
Yeah, and from my experience in support, it doesn't have to be Elementor per se. It can also be your theme that's secretly outputting extra information or stuff that's hidden somewhere in one of the boxes. There's so many options. Fortunately, if you have Yoast SEO Premium, and there's a discount code on your screen right now, you have access to our awesome support team. I can now say that because I'm no longer really part of it.
You could say before and there's still a chance that Taco might answer your email. There are also others who do it more often, but no, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the big benefits of having Yoast SEO Premium. Do reach out to us, and we'd love to help you solve problems like these. All right, and then we have a question by Anne Hall. Is it better to have many authors, or can there be just one?
That's nice. There's a few, again, the short answer and the long answer. As many as it makes sense to have, but don't invent or create people. Don't misattribute content to people who didn't write it, even though that might be tempting. Avoid ghostwriting and kind of fake authorship. So it really boils down to, if you have content that is authored, i.e. was written by a human being with a name and a face and expertise and an opinion, who is that person? And demonstrate that and put them against it. And if that person doesn't exist, maybe you need to hire one or train one or change your content strategy so you're not misrepresenting who's writing stuff. So it might be that your site only has one author and they are the expert in all the things you write about. You might have 20, and you might make sure that they're writing the same stuff, but don't fake it. Don't try and cheat it. The whole point is that Google is getting really good at understanding who's writing things and can recognize it. Even if you lie and cheat and get it wrong deliberately, they will unpick that. But equally, there's value in helping them understand who wrote the thing, because an expert author, their content is liable to be more relevant, more useful, more on topic than somebody else. So they might rank it higher. They might change how it shows in the search results. Authorship's a big deal. It's worth looking at your whole content strategy and thinking about, how do I use my humans?
And I think we need to add that if you have multiple authors, make sure they complete their profiles on your WordPress site. Nice. Because Yoast SEO adds a lot of information, or a lot of options to add information to their profiles that will then be used in the schema. All right, I see we have a few minutes left, and there is also a few questions left. If you have a question that you really want answered, now is the time to go and upvote, because we can't handle them all. As I see, there are 33 left. So a one that I'm actually curious about as well. How important are directories to information and education blogs who publish regular new content? And how do you choose the best directories for your niche market? And of course, are there bad directories?
Well, yes, there are bad directories if they only exist for the purpose of search engines. If they are actually being used by human beings and being referenced by others in your industry, etc., then they're great. If they only exist to improve search engine rankings, then they are a 20-year-old idea that should go away.
I think the decision is probably not dissimilar to a physical directory or like a Yellow Pages type thing, right? If it's useful and it's used by real people, it's probably worth being in there. But if it's just a vehicle for adverts or only being like the only people in there are the businesses in there giving it to each other, doesn't make much sense. Yeah, definitely. If it feels real and useful, then go for it. But otherwise, no.
All right. And then a quick question that I can answer myself, which is fun. Is this being recorded and available later? The answer is obviously yes. We are recording this, and all our webinars can be viewed on yoast.com/webinar. Back to content. How many internal links should a Cornerstone article have?
Yeah, I think that the comment that Sam gave there, which is awesome, because that's a workshop by our boss, aka my wife, Marika, on internal linking. That was actually really good. She explains a lot about this stuff, and if you're wondering about stuff like this, I really would urge you to go look at that Summer School workshop. It is really, really good. It's free. Go have a look. It's an awful lot of fun, yeah, there is so much to say about this topic because, of course, there is no one size fits all answer. So I'm not going to give you one.
All right. Let me see. I think someone has been listening to your podcast. Because if I remember correctly, you recommended Wistia for B2B as a platform above YouTube. Is that still what you recommend?
Depends. I actually recorded a podcast with Phil Nottingham not too long ago on video SEO. That too is freely available. Go to yoast.com/podcast and find it. And it actually, we talk about this quite at length on how to do what and what is the right choice for which case. We use Wistia at Yoast. We also use YouTube. They are different things with different purposes. Well, listen to that podcast. It's 15 minutes of Phil giving lots and lots of great insight into all of that.
Yes. All right. So let's see. We have 2 more minutes. Let me find the best question out here, unless you beat me to it.
No, you go. The best question. That's exciting.
Yes. There's so many. Yes, this is definitely it. Will there ever be another YoastCon?
Wow.
God, do I hope so. That is definitely the plan. But there's these things called viruses that seem to be wanting to go around the world even more than we all do.
That's the kind of virus that McAfee doesn't help against, right?
No, we've yet to find something that is as crazy as McAfee. But no, we really want to do another YoastCon, but we'll have to see how this pandemic goes and whether that allows us to do it anytime soon. But we'd love to.
All right. And with that, we end answering your questions for today. Make sure to register for our next SEO webinar. There's the green flashy button at the bottom. Do click it. It will make it very easy to sign up for the webinar. In the meantime, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to share this already, but I'm still going to do that anyway, because we secretly maybe started building a small Yoast community on Facebook. And either I'm going to get a lot of pings by Sam now telling me, don't share the link, don't share the link. However, it is already in the chat. So in that case, I apologize. if you are using Yoast SEO Premium and you want to be part of an amazing community, do find the Yoast SEO community on Facebook. It's still small now, but in a few years, you can then safely say that you were one of the first to join it. And with that, I think we've reached the end of today's webinar. Joost, thank you so much. Jono, thanks a million. And everyone, thank you for joining, and see you again on the 28th of September.
Amazing
Thanks,
questions,
everyone. It was great to see so many good questions.
Yeah, really good.